Okay, we're live.
Okay, Chairman, you can begin.
Right. Well, thank you very much, and good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, I am echoing, aren't I?
Good evening.
Right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Planning Policy Committee held this evening on the 10th of December on Microsoft Teams. It's a comparatively thin agenda by planning policy standards, so hopefully we won't be making use of the necessary 2 hours ruling, but let's see how we go. So without further ado, I'll turn to apologies for absence, please. Agenda item 1.
No apologies were received, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just have been told by Councillor North that he will be joining the meeting, but a little later on. I think he's got another meeting which will probably be overrunning. So can we now turn to the minutes of the meeting on October the 19th? And it's quite a detailed set of minutes, and there were a number of discussions on various questions and proposals. May I sign these as, or virtually sign these as a true record? Thank you. Has anybody got any comments as to the accuracy of the minutes? Okay, then thank you, and the minutes are accepted. Thank you. Agenda item 4. Are there any questions by members under Council Procedure Rule 10.3?
Chairman, item 3. You've missed item 3.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Thank you. I was too busy looking through the minutes of the last thing. Yes. Item 3. Are there any declarations of interest, please? Okay. Now, are there any questions by members under Council Procedure Rule 10.3?
There were none received, Chairman.
Thank you. Well, we've got through nearly the whole agenda in 5 minutes or less.
You'll be lucky.
But we do have 1 or 2 other small items, and the agenda item 5 is the local plan update and progression. We have a report set out for you. It is interesting because it isn't all about the local plan. It is certainly about the local development scheme, and it touches on the local plan, but it also considers work streams which fall outside the Part 2 plan that we've been wrestling with this last sort of several meetings. So I believe, Michael, you're taking us through this, and it's over to you, sir.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah. I'll just introduce this report quite brief. It is fairly self-explanatory.
Michael, we're losing you.
Yeah, obviously we're very much focused on getting the local plan to our aim on priority, obviously, for the next 2 or 3 months. But beyond that, as we move into the new future, we're very much future work streams that we need. Just
Michael,
just one
Michael,
part process.
I'm sorry. I don't think anybody can hear you. You are breaking up quite badly.
Oh dear.
Can you get closer to your computer or microphone and sort of try and talk again?
Chairman, it's sometimes an idea to turn the monitor off. You sometimes get better reception then.
Okay.
Yeah, if you turn your camera off, it might help.
Can you hear me now, everybody?
Yeah, that's better.
Good. Okay, I'll press on. Okay, this is very much about looking forward. Apologies for any technical hitches there, but we'll manage. So I just really want to say that we as officers have looked at a number of projects that we may want to take forward that we think are things that we as certainly as our team in the East North Hants areas will be looking to work on over the pretty much of 2021. I would emphasise there's 4 particular projects that I would highlight, and these are listed at paragraph 2.3. There's the residential annexes supplementary planning document, which my colleague Anne Dix is leading on, and she's making good progress on that already. There's perhaps quite a significant thing we're looking to take on during and then
Michael, I'm afraid you're breaking up again.
Oh dear. I'll try and speak as slowly and carefully as I can. I'll try and keep this as brief as possible.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So I'm not quite sure what the technology going on, but okay. Next one is a self and custom house building SPD, which is quite a specialist piece of work. And lastly is a rural exceptions housing SPD. Now, in my report, a brief timetable for each is set out, so an indicative time frame. So this is really, projects that we want to be working on. I must emphasise that this list is not exhaustive. These are just 4 that we've highlighted. I mean, there are many other potentially quite substantial projects, such as developer contributions, rural affordable housing, and so on, that will probably need to be dealt with at a North Hants level. So really, I just want to say that this is presented to you as members just to really sort of say how we're looking to go forward during 2021. So really, it's just to highlight these priorities work streams. Over to you as the committee now. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Michael, and
thank you.
Thank you for the report, because it is quite encouraging that it shows that business carries on, and that there are still live work streams which will go on beyond the life of East North Hants Council and on into the new unitary. I'm particularly interested in the rural exceptions housing SPD, and as some of the planners know, we've had a bit of a bun fight with a particular rural exception up in my part of the world, and so the other SPDs and the work on town centre strategies is also much to be welcomed. Richard, did you indicate you wanted to add something to this? Yeah, thank you, Dorothy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Councillor.
Yeah. Apologies for jumping in. It's just I know that it was difficult tonight. I've not got a camera, as you know. Hopefully you can hear me. I know Mike's,
if we see Michael and hear you, it'll work perfectly.
Between us, we get fantastic reception. But yeah, just hopefully if members want sort of anything further, I can add on to that. I mean, Mike's covered it, but I know it was sort of breaking up most of the time. The same on mine. I could pick up most of it. I mean, just to add to what Mike said, really, I think it's important to just make clear that these proposals of the work stream come out of the local plan itself. So hopefully once we've submitted that, then this work will continue on the plan and those policies in that plan. It will aim to bring better and more quality applications for East North Hants, part of the new unitary. So this is work that will have a valid lifetime. It's not because we're going into unitary that we would lose this work, because the Part 2 plan would remain probably for around 5 years or so. Obviously the focus initially would be on reviewing the strategic plan. So you've got quite a lifetime of opportunity here where these policies can be used by councillors at the Planning Management Committee in the future. And that's allied also to the town strategies, which you've just mentioned, Chair, as well, and the opportunities within the town. So I'll leave it at that, but I just wanted to, to get that over, because I know Mike's sort of breaking up a little bit. So hopefully, that clears up.
Thank you very much, Richard. That's terrific, and you know, I think we got the gist of what Mike was trying to say. Okay, I've got Councillor Peacock and then Councillor Maxwell. Councillor Peacock, please.
Thank you very much. Yes, definitely welcome this new town centre strategy review. Long overdue from my perspective, being a resident member, and with all the growth that's going on around the town, this is an area that we do need to concentrate on. We've had talks with the district as it is now, and the town council already putting some plans in action with the guidance from district. So hopefully this will move forward, and I welcome this greatly.
Thank you. Me too. I think it's a good bit of work. Councillor Maxwell, please.
What I would like to say actually is I'm pleased that you're going to be looking at affordable housing, because I think that we've got to be looking at the next 20, 30, 50 years actually, which is what was quoted today on the radio. But we've got to make sure that when you're looking at affordable housing, it's fit for purpose, not just, oh, well, it's okay, we can bung them up. It's got to be so that people want to go and live in them, not, you know, oh, they've got no choice, because some people don't have choices. And affordable housing has to meet the criteria of families, not just single people or a couple. So I hope that next year when you look at it, you'll take this into consideration. Thank you.
Okay. Well, certainly members who've been on this committee a long time will know that we have always tried to include aspiration in our planning policies going forward, not just the literal need that a particular situation might fit immediately, but looking beyond. So, you know, when, as you say, if it were a couple, you know, looking to the possibility of children and things like that. So we've always tried to build in aspiration above and beyond the minimum requirements. So thank you. Good point. Anybody else wants to speak on this? Councillor Jenny, please.
Just slightly concerned about the residential annex SPD consultation period, February to March 2021. Can we please make sure that that consultation finishes before March the 23rd?
Further, yeah. Yep, I think that's taken on board, but thank you, it's a good point. Okay, is there anybody else would like to speak on this item? Councillor North has joined the meeting, ladies and gentlemen, by the way.
No, that's Tarzan.
Well, it could be. Well, something purporting to be Councillor North has joined the meeting. Whether or not he's swinging through the trees, I can't quite tell. Anyway.
Evening, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Oh, always a pleasure, sir. Always a pleasure. Oh, there he is. It is Tarzan. Splendid. Okay. If there's nobody else who wants to speak on this item, at 13.1, the committee is recommended to note the priority work streams to supplement the local plan policies for town development, brief opportunities and strategies, and the supplementary planning documents as identified in the above report. May I have somebody to propose that we note it? Thank you. And seconded. And all those in favour?
Aye.
Are there any against? Are there any abstentions? Thank you, that's carried. Great, right, we now move to agenda item 6. It's the last item on the agenda, and it is the response to a consultation on viable site allocations and the Rushden East SUE. We do have a public speaker, Gary Stevens. Are you there, Mr. Stevens? Oh. Well, we did have.
Stevens, if you can press *6. Oh, yeah, you've unmuted yourself. Yeah, that's fine.
Mr. Stevens, are you there, sir?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can. Excellent. Well, Mr. Stevens is from Marman and works with Bellway. Have I pronounced your firm, sir, correctly?
It's Maran Planning.
Maran Planning. Okay. Okay, then. Well, that's great. Well, welcome, Mr. Stevens. And you have 3 minutes, and we'll be very interested to hear what you have to say.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. I'm speaking on behalf of Bellway Homes Limited, who have an interest in the land referred to as the Rushden Southern option, or a land east of the A6 Bedford Road. They support the recommendation of your officers and have asked if you could take into consideration the following points. Firstly, and by way of background, Bellway Homes have been undertaking various survey work and assessments over the past year in relation to matters such as ecology, landscape, transportation and archaeology. And these have informed initial master planning work, which has been shared with your officers and helped to inform the proposed amendment to the site boundary, which is referred to as the Northern Extension, which is before you this evening within your report, and which we support. Subject to the recommendations being carried forward this evening, this work will continue, and Bellway Homes will compile an evidence base to demonstrate the suitability and deliverability of development of the land. And this evidence base will be shared with your officers to help support your Part 2 local plan as it progresses through the examination process. Secondly, Bellway Homes have begun the process of engaging with key stakeholders. Meetings and discussions have been held with Natural England, Northamptonshire County Council Highways and Education Departments, and more recently with Rushden Town Council. And with their proposed sports hub on the adjoining land, there is the potential for both Bellway and the Town Council to work together in relation to delivery and also potentially enhancing the facilities as part of a hub that has wider community provision. Finally then, in conclusion, Bellway Homes are fully committed to this project and will put in the necessary resources to support the Part 2 local plan process and also bring forward development in accordance with a timetable to be agreed with yourselves and your officers in due course. And we therefore endorse the recommendation and thank you for your time this evening.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Stevens. That was very succinct and clear. We do appreciate you taking the trouble to speak to us tonight. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. We now move. This report is before you. It obviously contains quite a number of the representations which was received through the consultation which we've been engaged in. And I believe, Richard, you're going to be taking us through the report. Richard, you're possibly on mute.
Yep. Okay, that's unmuted. Hopefully you can hear loud and clear now. Unfortunately, I have no camera as I mentioned tonight, but as long as you can hear, I think that's the main point to get over. Okay, so this report then provides a response to the representations received through the local plan consultation, various appendices which I'll sort of mention over the next few minutes introducing the report. The background, as you know, we undertook consultation on an alternative provision to Rushden Lakes West following the objection that was lodged by Natural England at the previous consultation. In terms of the key issues arising from the consultation, they're summarised in section 2 of the report, but I'll just take you through some of the salient points. Overall, there were around 55 representations. Now, in terms of the first area of representations, I'll look at the proposed additional housing allocation, then I'll move on to the Rushden Lakes West, Rushden East side of the consultation. So in relation to the proposed additional housing allocations, Natural England were one of the recipients. Now they have maintained the objection to the proposal for Rushden Lakes West. They have welcomed the alternative site. You'll see through section 2.5 onwards, I've summarised the issues there in relation to to the revised response from Natural England. As I say, effectively they do welcome the new proposal, and that objection to the existing site does remain. In addition to that, the work we are doing is still ongoing for the HRA, which is the Habitats Regulation legislation. We do have James Riley on the call tonight if members want to ask any questions in respect of that piece of work. And again, I do sort of ask if you want to do that. James was around last time, didn't have any questions, but do feel free to ask him on the work that's currently being undertaken. What James has done is to produce a technical guide, which is advice note, sorry, which is appended to the report. That looks at the two sites and provides a conclusion in terms of the current position. What he can't do is complete that HRA. That needs to be done after we've formally selected a site. James can give you a little more background on that if you choose to ask. In terms of the actual proposals themselves, what that advice note looks at is a number of aspects. And one of them being the functionally linked land, which was one of the concerns of Natural England in respect of Rushden Lakes West. It's likely that in over time that wouldn't have an adverse effect. There is an ecologist report that's been done on that since we last met in September on this particular issue. But nevertheless, Natural England do have some outstanding issues and concerns in that respect over the functioning land. They've talked about the future potential, but that could apply anywhere. So, you know, whilst we take on board that, I don't think that's an issue that should necessarily be just related to Rushden Lakes West. And again, it's unproven what the issue would be. Beyond that, there are recreational pressures that were raised. Now, those have been to some degree addressed by this revised proposal, which Rushden Lakes West proposed allocation even was put forward. As members will be aware, it's land only south of the link road now, so it's less number of houses, 350 houses as opposed to 450. Now, again, there are some outstanding issues there. There's been some good progress in respect of the work that's been done. There still is a degree of conflict over the size of the called Stang, which is the suitable alternative natural green space. The Natural England proposal is for a larger site of around 10 hectares at the moment. I think we're around 6 in terms of the proposals from Rushden Lakes West. So there are some outstanding issues there again, which unfortunately, you know, they're not conclusive in terms of Natural England being able to remove that objection to the site. And thirdly, at the bottom of page 15 of your report, there's the urbanisation impact, and this is probably one of the issues that Natural England have informed us that it's unlikely that the objection would be removed. It's the forms of pollution and the impact on the SPA itself and the precedent that might set. Those are the 3 areas that were looked at, and again, the same 3 areas were looked at through the alternative site, which was part of the requirements that we were asked to undertake through Natural England. And again, I'll just run through very quickly. The land to the east of the A6 Bedford Road, which is recreational pressures. I think it was noted that certainly there could be additional pressures and there would need to be mitigation measures factored into the site proposal. And that's recognised, and that's one of the reasons we proposed the northern boundary extension, which is altering the red line to the site, which we went out to consultation on to ensure that we can get the full 450 houses along with all the mitigation measures in that proposal. Urbanisation, well, it does pose a lower risk in that respect. It's further away from the SPA, the Special Protection Area. It lies outside the 3-kilometre zone for the mitigation strategy, so it is further away. Nevertheless, the mitigation measures would start to provide some solution as well. Those are probably the main issues in relation to the alternative site, which we consider to be a viable deliverable site. You've just heard from the promoter, Marons, a few moments ago as well, in terms of the deliverability of that site, which is, I think, in one ownership, taken forward by Bellway. Beyond that, there were a number of issues from other representation areas of representation. I won't go into the detail, but you can see the headlines there: highway issues, education issues, etc. The two main ones I would probably point you to on page 17 relate to amendments to the proposed site allocation area, and the key one, as I say, is this extension to the northern boundary to allow for a comprehensive master plan of delivering the houses, which we feel is appropriate. Beyond that, there are some proposal changes to the policy itself, and these would look at things such as bringing in ancillary, well, being very clear on the ancillary uses in relation to the site and the sports hub to the east, sustainable urban drainage solutions, connections to the town centre, etc., and a transport assessment, which has been undertaken by the promoters, but we want to formalise that within the policy, and you can see in the appendix that there are some red line changes to the policy to pick up all those issues. We then go on to the responses to those issues, which are laid out on pages 17, 18 and 19 in the report. I won't go through those because they're quite detailed, but obviously if councillors have got questions on those and the appendices, officers can answer those questions in more detail. The second part of the report relates to the delivery of Rushden East Sustainable Urban Extension, and this was the based on the legal note, if you like, or advice that we had. It was to bring Rushden East into the local plan, primarily because Rushden East is seeking to allocate land, and that can only be done for a development plan document or local plan, rather than as a separate standalone document. So the purpose of this particular consultation was to redline the plan, set out the boundaries of the development for Rushden East, and to bring the master plan framework document in line with the local plan, so it would sit off that as another document. Now, there are a number of representations that were made on that document back in February, March, when we initially consulted separately, but as part alongside the local plan. We then consulted again just recently on that master plan framework. What's happened now is that all those representations we're bringing back to you tonight. A lot of detailed representations that have been put into the appendices that you will have seen, raising various questions, and you'll see the proposed changes and the office responses in there. I have to say, in summary, we don't feel that there's a lot of change necessary. A lot of the detail in the master plan is still to be agreed. It's the principles that sit in the policy and the defining boundaries that we feel is the key issue for the committee tonight to consider. In relation to the next steps, if tonight's recommendation is resolved as recommended, we aim to bring the submission plan back to you in the middle of January for agreement to go out to what we call the Regulation 19, which is the last, it's a sort of legal consultation period, if you like, and that will take us into the submission of the plan to the Planning Inspectorate. Would be able to be done before the end of East Northants Council's tenure. So that would be the way forward after this. We'd come back in January and undertake a 6-week consultation leading up to either the second week in March, just before the PERDA period, and then submit to the Planning Inspectorate. So that is a bit of a quick whiz through the main issues, but happily take questions from members, along with my colleague Mike Burton. And over to you, Chair. Thank you. You're on mute, David.
I seem to have muted myself. I beg your pardon. No, thank you very much for a very clear steer through the paper. It is important to point out that the meeting that is proposed at 2.21 in the paper in January will be the meeting with which this committee signs off the draft local plan. It will then go out for consultation, to be sure, and the document and all consultation responses will be considered by the planning inspector. But there will, after the January meeting, there will be no substantive changes to the draft document. So it's quite important. So thank you for all the hard work that's got us to this point. OK, so I've got Councillor North, please, and then Councillor Mercer.
Thank you, Chair. A question and then a couple of comments around Rushden Lakes West. So the question, which I'll still wait till I've finished on that particular point, but the question around the urban extension, and I haven't gone through every single word of the appendices, but I do wonder 9.6 on page 80 in relation to 9.6 with the crossing out of the potential capacity for further additional development in the longer term. I thought that was a given. It may be because we've actually drawn a line around the boundary in relation to the local plan part 2, Chair. So I'll let Richard explain that bit, because there's no supporting text in the formatting of why that's been removed, and obviously it's important over the next 30 years to extend that, but as I say, it might be because we put a red line around the boundary. But overall, I'm very supportive we actually included that in the local plan part 2. The second point, Chair, it's inevitable, and so I'm obviously not going against supporting the recommendations, but I am disappointed, although not surprised, in relation to Rushden Lakes West. I know that wasn't universally necessarily supported, but it was certainly something this committee did actually sign off as being the preferred site. So just as a reminder, it was a committee endorsement in the end. And I think from my point of view, Chair, and I think going forward for North Northants, in the economy is in relation to COVID and so forth, I think there is going to be much more of a need for multi-use sites going forward in the future that obviously covers leisure, housing and business, and it won't, I'm afraid, it will be left to town centre areas. In my view, I think otherwise retail parks across the country will completely and utterly fail. But that's a future issue, Chair. I think, as you would expect me to say, I do find it disappointing the Natural England of clawing back and didn't pick up on Stanton Cross development earlier. The SPA is a very, very important area, and service protection and conservation, which I'm very keen on, and certainly in relation to wildlife. So I can understand the issues around the boundaries and obviously the mitigation that is needed for these sites, and I fully understand the section in there, and obviously it's been clear, and we've had very good consultation advice in relation to our consultants in relation to functionally linked land and so forth. But I do understand, Chair, the issues around urbanisation. It's just disappointing that across the road you can build out Stanton Cross almost to the boundary, with thousands and thousands of houses having just as much impact on the SPA and within 3 miles of the SPA, and that was allowed to be built out and local plan passed. But something like this hasn't been, and I think in my view, it's very disappointing clawback in relation to all that. But that being said, Chair, I fully understand where we are. And as I said at the beginning, I'm obviously not going to go against the recommendations. I fully understand where we're at. But one thing I will say, and that I have said before, that this is a local plan. It's not just about housing delivery numbers. And, yes, we can. And this is nothing against the developer or the landowner in relation to the site in Bedford Road. But as I represent basically a complete housing estate with nothing on it at all, certainly no industry or anything supporting jobs, it would concern me that in the last 10 years or so, the build out in Rushden has been housing estates and cul-de-sacs with no great big links to the town centre, and this one is no better on Bedford Road. I will say absolutely no better. And what I'd be very, very on the watch out for, Chair, is actually if we go forward with this, which we probably will, as I said, it's not just about delivering housing numbers. And I'm very, very concerned that actually we'll be just churning and churning tens of thousands of houses with no industry and no support and no infrastructure support for the town centre. And it is across the A6, so it is separated from the town just as much as as Rushton Lakes is, and I think this is very, very concerning for the future, because as I say, it's not just about housing delivery, it's about delivering a local plan. And that thing, you know, Rushton Lakes West aside, and I understand all the arguments from fellow colleagues in on this meeting and all those arguments, but that aside, I'm still very concerned that we would just churn out another housing estate, which is what I represent in Rushton, and can do so much better for a local. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor, and I think you make some pretty strong points. Our local plan, and indeed our whole planning policy, has never been just about housing numbers. We've always tried to include employment and leisure and other activities in the mix. It's always been a mix, and of course, with your earlier point, I fully agree with you about Stanton Cross. I suspect Natural England suddenly woke up when they saw Stanton Cross, and that's probably had an impact on our Rushton Lakes West, which was, as you say, completely signed off by this committee and other bodies. So yes, thank you. The points are strongly made and well made.
And I did have a question at the beginning of my long bit there, Chair, so thank you.
Okay, remind us what the question was.
I didn't think I was talking for that, Chairman. It was just in relation to the boundary on 9.6. I didn't know.
Oh yeah, the red lining. Yes.
I just wanted a reminder. That's all, Chair. On Rushton and 9.6 on Rushton Lake. I'll get it right in a minute. On Rushton Zoo. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Did Richard want to comment on that quickly?
Yes, Chair, I can come back on that. So as it was raised in relation to a representation the consortium themselves had made, which was on page 50 of your report. This allocation is about Rushton East, and it's how much we should provide direction for future development, if you like, which is it is an issue for the strategic plan. What I've said in terms of that response is that we could consider changing the supporting text to take that out. But what we want to see is an opportunity through the development of that SUE at Rushton East, the opportunity for connections to be made to land surrounding it in the future. So if it's proposed in the future that the land, for example, to land is what we're talking about here, if the opportunity is there in the future, then that should be the master plan to allow future connections into that area. So we wouldn't, you know, in terms of good planning, we would want to make that site very connected. Whether we would need to go as far as saying that is the land we would want to develop in the future, that's not for this plan to say. Having said that, Councillor, I agree, we're not actually saying that in those red sort of deletion. My view as a planning officer is we don't necessarily need to be that direct at this point in time. We leave the opportunities there, and it's for the strategic plan to ensure the best way forward when to review. It could work out with this area of land. I think it's more important in a way that those connections are made available, and that's the master plan would need to address. So that was my response to the first point. I don't know if you want to come back on that, or obviously you'll probably need to agree whether you want to change that or not first of all.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I appreciate there's other people waiting, but as Richard did offer, I mean, I do have a bit of an issue. I understand the point, but it kind of closes it down. And maybe say we have to live within the plan period, but we don't know at the moment whether a Part 1 plan review is going to come down to 250 houses and whether it's going to stay at the 500 strategic level. And I think that's a bit binding, because we have to go through a large process again to meet it as a strategic site, where actually I thought it would be much better picked up on a local plan Part 2 extension for housing need, rather than have to go through the strategic process, Chair. I think it really does close it off, which I'm a bit concerned about.
Okay, Richard.
But I'll leave that open for others.
No, Richard, did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I suppose it's how we deal with it, really, because if there are changes to the supporting text or indeed the policies, we've got this recommendation for any further detailed revisions can be delegated to the head of service, the chair, which is yourself, obviously, and the deputy chair, Tony Boto, along with the chair of the Rushden East Project Board, which is yourself, Councillor North. But also, I guess we could probably look towards democratic services, whether we could take a vote on that or not, or how you would want to progress that, because at the moment we're proposing it is taken out. But like I say, if councillors wish to retain it, then that's your prerogative, really.
Right, Councillor North,
Well, no, I appreciate 3 or 4 people wanting to speak in their own right, so maybe we can leave this in the end. If nobody else comments, then
okay, we'll come back.
I've got it as a holding question that may fall into your delegation, Chair. I'll just see what others say on their own points, but I'll still have a concern whether we take that text out personally.
Okay.
Chair, can we come back to that point in
yes, please.
later on?
Yes. That's right. We'll that is in the air. We'll keep it there, and we'll discuss it when we wind up later. So I've got Councillor Mercer, Councillor Lewis, and Councillor Peacock. Please, Councillor Mercer, Councillor Jenny coming later. Then
thank you very much. I have a number of points to make, mainly on the southern option. I think obviously we need to go ahead with that, but I'll just have a couple of queries. One, you said that it's all in the same ownership, but you've also said that this extension is that it's Lagan Homes. Maybe they're not the owners, maybe they're just the proposers. But I'm just wondering what the status is with the golf club, because I couldn't quite understand from the paragraph on page 17 whether this would mean that the golf club would lose part of its land, or whether it just wasn't very clear to me. Overall, as Councillor North just sort of said, these whole estates on the southern part of Rushden, got the Barrington Road estate, the Greenacre estate, there's not a single shop, business, community centre, anything, and now we're proposing another 450 houses here, and there'll be more to come, obviously, as time goes on. We haven't got a supermarket up this end of town at all, so I think some of those other things need to be taken into account, because otherwise, there's just no local facilities for people here. The other thing that there are a couple of detailed things, but the other thing that concerns me is that the county council on page 31 said that there's no education provision within safe walking distance. That's always been my concern out here, is the only way really to walk to any school is down Bedford Road and then up Barrington Road to the school there, the primary school. And although in the ACOM report it mentions about pathways across to Rushden East Country Park, etc. So I don't know how formalised those pathways are, whether they're suitable for children to walk to school, etc. But I just like clarification that. But otherwise, it is a concern that once the Rushden East is built and there are schools there, but that could be a long while coming. We've already been waiting 8 years, and it is 8. I checked, but where are these young people going to go to school? That's the thing I was asking. But on a detailed point, page 17, sort of in the middle, it says draft policy amendments, and then it mentions about ancillary uses, and I don't quite understand. It says the promoter has questioned the evidence to provide for ancillary uses to support the proposal. Now, I assume that means part of the actual wording of the policy that they wanted to take out, where it says, and together with supporting infrastructure and a mix of ancillary retail, business and community uses. And presumably we're intending to leave that in, which would then cover what we were saying just now about having possible retail, etc. So maybe you could come. No, I've got a couple of other things, but do you want to come back on those first, officers, and so we don't lose a thread?
Richard?
Yes, that would be very helpful, Councillor Mercer. There's some good points there that I hopefully can clarify, and there are things I'm familiar with. Just to clarify the first point then in relation to the ownership. Yeah, the northern part of the extension of the site would be the same ownership. Actually, to be clear on this, there is an area to the southeast of the site which backs onto the golf club, which is within the option of Lagan Homes. So that part of the site, small part in the corner in the southeast, would not be developed by Bellway, but we would expect to see a comprehensive master plan that encompasses all that land within it. It's a smaller area, but certainly the rest of it would be sort of under the option of Bellway. So it would all come together as one proposal. We don't expect any problems from that arrangement. So that's something we're aware of, and we have talked with the promoters about that. Why have we included the part from Lagan Homes? Well, I think when we went out to consultation in February and March, that was obviously this has evolved over time, but the original proposal included that part from Marans and Bellway, which included as part of the Lagan Homes proposal. We thought it was good practice to leave that in, because your second question, Councillor Mercer, about the golf club probably makes sense why we've kept that in. You've got effectively John White's Golf Club, which fronts the road itself. In between that, you've got the driving range, but up in the top left-hand corner, I think you've got what we call the foot golf, or it's an underused piece of land, and that is the element that we're bringing in within the allocation. Lagan Homes themselves have actually made a representation. They wish to bring in the whole of the golf course and the driving range, but that, we're not looking for that quantum of housing, so we don't need to extend it that far. So that's why I've drawn the line around there, and that's the sort of logic to what we've done there. It will basically incorporate a bit of underused land southeast. In terms of services, again, very good point. We've made, I think, some good progress with the plans of the site in terms of the expectation of members for supporting facilities on the site. We would like to see some development, but I think certainly in terms of the representations that we had, in this case from Marans and Bellway, the officer response is that we would like to sort of look at some wording for the policy, which could be agreed under 4. I have drafted out an additional criteria which would look to perhaps deliver some additional facilities in relation to the what we would call the sports hub area to the east. So there will be possibilities there. And I think through you, Chair, what we would want to do after this meeting, if it's agreed, we would agree the wording of that particular bullet point in the policy to incorporate that. I mean, I have a draft wording. I'm not going to say this will be the draft wording, but just to give you some idea of thinking on this, I think it would be helpful just to sort of read if I can find the right page on the report. I scribbled it on. So I would say something like this would be in, I don't know if you've got your reports open on page 70, but page 70 is the draft policy for this site. Halfway.
Richard, I think we've lost you.
To add in a further. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can now, but we didn't hear you. You were just about to read your draft policy.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. We have a number of bullet points in the policy, and it could be along the lines of as follows: providing an opportunity for delivering ancillary uses to support the allocation by creating a hub of wider community provision which supports the relocation of the sporting facilities on the eastern side of the boundary. And that's a little bit wordy. We haven't quite got the right wording yet, but you can see the sort of thing that we'll be looking at.
And that's being added to the draft policy at page 70, correct?
Yeah, but it's not. Don't take that as the precise wording.
No, just so.
Things at the moment, but obviously that
It's what we're talking
just to give you an idea, that would come under, I mean, basically what we're looking at is some form of facilities to supplement the sports hub area. And we've had some positive discussions with the promoters in that respect, and obviously they're aware of the issue that members have raised in relation to, estates without any form of facilities. And I think there was a further point that Councillor Mercer raised in relation to
education. Pathways.
Okay. Yeah. Well, again, I know that certainly there's no objection from the county council, but what they would expect is some robust discussion with the promoters. And again, we have met with the promoters to inform them that discussion would need to take place as quickly as possible to understand the implications and what can be provided to resolve that position as best as possible. So we haven't got an absolute answer for you here tonight, but that will be worked on in the coming months in terms of the master plan, but also how that site can connect to the wider area. So they're discussions that will be ongoing.
Okay.
Okay. So carrying on page 18. In one of the sections, and I'm not sure whether this is the developer who's written this, but it's in the middle of one paragraph. It says, it's not therefore considered appropriate that the site allocation should be further extended. And then 2 lines down, it says, it is therefore proposed that this remains within the proposed allocation. So it's talking about the extra land, and that seems to be contradictory to me. That at one point it says it shouldn't be included, and then it says it should. It might just be that somebody isn't very clear in the thinking there, but it just is confused me.
Yes, for you, Chair, it probably is a bit difficult to explain, but in the written word, it comes back to that issue. I said that the original red line includes a little part of the Lagan land, which is that disused part of the golf course.
That's right.
What Lagan Homes representation wants to extend it even further, which would include the driving range and the golf course.
Right.
That's the bit that we don't want to do. So we're saying keep it as it is, don't extend it further. So that was the issue behind that.
Okay. Then on to the Rushden East. I agree with Councillor North. I think it's dangerous to take out with potential capacity for further additional development, because we've always said that we thought that there ought to be left open so that you can go beyond it. We don't want sort of ransom strips so that it's built up to the border and then no potential development thereafter. That doesn't necessarily mean to say there's going to be development there, but it just leaves it open rather than closing the door. So I would favour leaving that paragraph in, as I think Councillor North was suggesting. The other thing is, back on the representations, I was rather confused about the highways one. I mean, when they say about super crossings that they've never been asked about it, are they the sort of the crossings before they came back and said that they would allow for the super toucan crossings? I can't remember all the different wordings, the different types of crossings they said, but they seem to be saying that they didn't support those crossings, but obviously you've got to have crossings to enable people to get across the road there. And then there's some sort of woody thinking at the end of their sort of things that we've been discussing for years on the Rushden East Port, but that never seemed to be quite clear what they're intending with these crossings.
Chairman, apologies. May I just interrupt and just say
sure.
that Councillor Reitcold, you've shared your screen. If you can unshare it because we can all see your screen. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Okay. Councillor Mercer, did you want to carry? Had you finished, or did you want to carry on? Yeah.
Well, Maurice finished on that. Yes, I mean, I think you know, they're only sort of detailed sections, but I do agree with what Councillor North said about leaving that last section in.
Getting the delineation correct.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Richard, did you want to come back on any of that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think in relation to the Rushden East highways issues, I mean, some of those issues have been picked up through the previous consultation that we had on Rushden East, and have been continued into this consultation that we brought in line with the local plan, because the actual framework document was the same document that went out in February, March, that is the one that was consulted on again in September, October. But yeah, I think certainly concern has been expressed, if we should say it like that, from the highways in terms of those super crossings. But you know, this is something, as we know from the Rushden East Project Board, that this has been an issue that is still to be resolved from both sides, really, in terms of getting an agreement. In terms of the local plan, we probably don't see this, and we've had some discussions legally about the position on the framework document. The detailed options, and there are detailed options within that document, don't necessarily reflect the local plan process. What I mean by that is there's a strategic policy in the Joint Core Strategy, which is adopted and sets the parameters we're doing. And we're proposing a local policy in the local plan to basically redline the site of Rushden East, and also join the master plan framework document to the local plan. But it doesn't have absolutely completed at this stage. We know work's still evolving on that. As long as the proposals in there are in line with the policy requirements, i.e. it's policy compliant, then that would be okay. So I think, Councillor Mercer, in a long-winded way, what I'm saying is that can still be worked through. So yes, there is a representation there from the highways who have concerns about that. I know members' views on the crossings, and obviously that work can continue to try and resolve that problem, but it shouldn't derail the local plan process.
Okay. Just finally, I just remembered there was one other thing, Chair. Near the end, I'm getting a lot of feedback now, where it's the supporting text, and it says about the 2019 monitoring report. Is that the latest monitoring report? Was there not one done in 2020?
Okay, Chair. No, we've had a vacant post for a little while. We have a new post holder in that post, so we are updating figures, but unfortunately with COVID as well, those figures haven't been updated as yet. We intend to submit the plan with the 2019 figures, and those 2020 figures will be submitted between now and the examination. It's not uncommon that councils do that. Indeed, some of them around Corby, for example, have done exactly the same thing. It's accepted by the Planning Inspectorate. We've got some idea of what's happening anyway, even if it's not formally recorded. As you know, we normally report back to you with the exact details of what's been built and how it's taken place over the year. We've got an idea on the larger sites, which is probably around 80% of the completion anyway. So it doesn't dramatically change the picture if we update it to 2020, but that work is still in hand. It will take a little while this year to complete. So
Richard,
we don't want to hold the plan.
Hold it for a moment. Councillor Reichold, can you pull up the taskbar that you can get in the middle of your screen? Good. Now, if you look on it, you go to the right, one little tiny bit to the right, a tiny bit. I can see your cursor. Just move it to the right. Stop. Back. It's like the golden shot. Right. Good. Could you click there? Left click. Can you left click?
Are you? Is everything okay now?
No, it's not. You're sharing. I think you're. If you click where you are.
Keep your voice down. Here.
Yeah.
I am on my own box showing myself and my daughter.
Yeah, okay.
What do I press?
Well, if where you are, if you simply click your left mouse.
The left mouse.
Yeah, done.
The left. No, well, okay, I don't know, because you're screen sharing, and it is a bit distracting. But if it's stuck, it's stuck. I don't know. I don't have any way of helping you. You can't move your cursor.
Perhaps, Chair, if you left the meeting and came back in.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you, Rupert. If you, yes, you could sign out or hang up, and then sign back in, and that would probably fix the issue.
I think, Chair, they may have been frozen.
Yeah, looks like it. Okay, well, we did our best in impossible circumstances. Okay.
A combination of bad sounds and a picture which is all over the place is really enough to send anybody up the wall at the moment.
Yeah. All right. Okay. That's fine.
And Councillor Lewis is all right, because I was a bit worried about him now if he was lasting constantly.
Yeah. Councillor Reichold, he's gone now. Well, okay, well, if he comes back. Oh, dear. All right. Let's get back to the meeting. Yes, Councillor Maxwell, I've seen you, but there's a number of speakers yet to come in. Councillor Mercer, were you? I'm
finished. Thank you. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Good. Then, Councillor Lewis, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yeah, loud and clear.
I don't totally agree with the previous speakers, as you may gather, and the thing that still puzzles me is why at the outset this site off the Bedford Road was not considered, because maybe it would have been the same outcome as we've got this evening. Reference to the comment about building houses, I mean, being an old person and lived in Royston for a long time, in '74, Royston was absolutely flush with jobs, as were our surrounding towns. Mm. And I think because the jobs went on the drip feed, we gradually withered on the vine, then East Northants perhaps didn't notice this, and it was easy to build houses, but more difficult to bring in jobs. And so that's where we are. Mm. As regards jobs at that end of the town, as Councillor Mercer's mentioned, 8 years and the sewer's not cut a single sod. There should be jobs there. There should be the potential to expand the jobs that should be there. And of course that would solve the problem. But of course the sewer's been gazumped by Royston Lakes, which wasn't even thought of. And but we're where we are. Education, walking distance. I've had the misfortune tonight of driving from my house to Worthingborough, going down Ditchford Lane, which goes right round where Royston Lakes West would be. It is total and utter shambles. I can assure you it is a shambles there. And if you wanted to walk from Royston Lakes West to somewhere with education, you'd need wings. So I think there are a lot of things to support this proposals, and I'd like to say well done to the officers for the quality of the reports that they presented us with tonight. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. And I echo your final remarks, certainly. Okay, Councillor Peacock, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, well, I concur with Councillor Lewis. I welcome these reports and all the effort that's been put into them. I hear what Councillor North's saying, how did they get away with Stanton Cross? Well, that's been going a few years as well, so things get lost in the mix. But once again, I think we're learning the point that once land's taken away for development, we can't put it back. And with the SSIs and places like that, it's important that we keep these areas. Hence why in the neighbourhood plan, this was always an area that the town council had kept open for this specific reason. And I'm glad that it stayed that way moving forward. Regarding the jobs, again, all right, there's none on the site, but as Councillor Lewis said, they have disappeared over the years, and even now, talking to some of the factory owners that have survived, they are struggling. But I think that's a worldwide thing. But we do have some brownfield sites still left that we can develop and probably get them up and running a lot quicker, that we need to look into and probably move forward with within the town, and we can get those up and running. Regarding facilities, I hear what they're saying again about the Barrington Road and the Hilly Farm and all around there, but there is a shop there is a Sainsbury's supermarket. They do have some facilities there, but they can always be enhanced, but you have to make sure that they work, because we know on Grange Way and various other estates around the town where we've had these sites and buildings, that they end up as takeaways. They don't always provide the facilities that people want. People have to support those facilities, but hopefully with Rushden East coming along as well, they will be able to support that. It's important, you know, that we do have these links. That's what we've always wanted with Rushden East. That's been a main concern of all the board members, that there's that connectivity into the town. And that's why we welcome the paper earlier tonight to enhance the town centre, so that we can encourage people to come into the town and use the town's community facilities. You know, there are proposals to build up our new community facility up on to the east of the site, and that will provide a community facility as well as extra sporting facilities within the town. So hopefully these things will grow. It will support the existing golf club that's there and the driving range. So hopefully they will also prosper with this influx of extra housing. Regarding footpaths, as you know, we're always looking to enhance the cycle routes into the town as well as footpaths, and that's something that we really want to work on. The south of town has always been an issue. The north's always been easy to provide because we've been able to follow the train track lines. There are no track lines on the south of the town, so it's something on the agenda that we need to work towards and try to incorporate, but not always easy with the narrow Victorian streets that we have at the moment. I don't think I've got anything else to say on Rushden East apart from with Councillor Mercer and Councillor North. I do agree. I think we all agreed that it was to be left open with that boundary to have that feed over to the east, north east, or part of that to be left open as an option for future years.
Well, that's certainly my recollection as well. That the boundary was supposed to remain fluid. And to allow for development. But I mean, your other point about balance, about having educational and leisure and retail and employment is so important, and it's been very much the cornerstone of our policies for years, whether it be the Rushden Zoo or whether it be any other substantial development. So yeah, it's well made. Okay.
Just one question. Yeah. Tongue in cheek a little bit. I know Rushden agreed to be a growth town, and the Rushden Zoo was supposed to be our growth. When does that stop? Because we've been nominated as a growth town, we tend to be seen as the area where anything can be put in or developed, because we've allocated ourselves as a growth town. But I think I was under the impression that the zoo was to be our expansion part, but we seem to be expanding all over. So it's just clarification on that.
Well,
I can see
Jenny
and Councillor shaking their heads, but that was the impression that I think a lot of people were given, that the condition that we would have Rushden East would be our growth area, not the whole town to our boundaries. So I think looking forward, as we plan these extra areas and the local plans are neighbourhood plans are re-looked at, we need to make sure that we keep open space, which we're trying to do as we go along, and we don't forget the last little bits that we've got left, and that we can save some open space there like we have on each development. Thank you.
We've been thrown slightly into disarray with Rushden Lakes West, so it's probably not helped, but anyway. Okay, thank you. Councillor Jenny, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a few comments to make. I'll try and follow them through in the order of sites that we've been dealing, and I'm not going to repeat the various points that have been made, because there's a lot of validity on both sides about Rushden Lakes West. The one thing that I would point out on that site that hasn't been covered off by anybody so far is the failure of the road in from Ditchard Lane into Rushton East, into Rushton Lakes. If that doesn't get built, we still have possibly a problem with the roundabout, the main roundabout into the site. One of the whole reasons for having and allowing the planning application for the Made in Northamptonshire site was to ameliorate the traffic problems on the main roundabout. And if that doesn't go in, then we're going to be faced with major works on that roundabout that has only been constructed about 3 or 4 years ago, and that is going to cause a fair amount of aggravation. So just bear that one in mind. I totally agree with the leader about the Gladman, the Slaters Lodge site. At some stage in the not too distant future, and this probably also picks up Councillor Peacock's point about growth and numbers and growth towns. The Oxford Cambridge Arc and the government are going to be insisting on significantly more houses coming into Northamptonshire, and we need to have somewhere quite sensibly, quite quickly and quite easily where we can actually deliver. And to my mind, that Slaters Lodge site has always been the one that could possibly provide us with that solution at with least disruption. Let's put it that way. Not saying that it's got to go there, but I've always felt that
Oh dear. I think he's cut off in his prime. Councillor Jenny? We're not doing very well tonight, technically, are we?
So don't worry, there is the thing here. Obviously, the site that we've got to support to get the Part 2 plan through, and the Part 2 plan going through is absolutely sacrosanct. Nothing can be allowed to stop that. However, what it is doing is allowing for up to 450 houses off that existing roundabout. It will probably mean that that roundabout may have to be remodeled, and 450 houses off one access, to my mind, is not reasonable. So I want to see a master plan for the whole area that is surrounded by Avenue Road, Bedford Road, the bypass, and Newton Road. We've got to make sure that we have a sound, sensible plan for the whole of the area, not just do it piecemeal, or we will end up, as Councillor North has already said, with glorified housing estates. We cannot allow that to happen. So while I'm generally in support of that site proceeding, it's with the caveat that it's got to be looked at as a major piece of work for the whole area.
Okay, right. So
was talking about going to school and walking down Bedford Road and then up Gouldsborough. There is a footpath into the town, believe it or not, that runs just to the east of the rugby pitches. So that would be the sensible route and into the new school. Can't remember the name of the road, near Bernard Van Close anyway. There is a reference in the paper to the Rushton Soldrop.
Councillor Jenny,
I'm not conscious of. Sorry.
You're sometimes disappearing altogether for some seconds.
Oh right, sorry. Is that better? There's the Rushton Soldrop corridor mentioned. Now I've heard about that, but I've never understood exactly what it is. And bearing in mind that there's the Bedford local expansion plan to put housing into that sort of area, I'd sort of like to understand a bit more about that. And then somebody was asking about road crossings, super crossings. They're just a glorified two-ton crossing. It's something that our consultants put into the Rushton East plan. I don't think it's anything I would ever go to the barricades over. It's the County Highways Department don't like them. Are we bothered about them? Well, personally, no. I think that's basically me, without going back over what everybody else said.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Councillor Reichelt.
I apologise for my absence. It was my fault that I inadvertently pressed the wrong button, but happily my daughter, who is much more computer literate than I ever can hope to be, she sorted us out.
Excellent. Well, welcome back to the meeting, Councillor, and thank you, Councillor Reichold's daughter.
It wasn't altogether his fault. I mean, Microsoft Teams quit on us, and we couldn't reconnect to the meeting. So
no, well, we thought something terrible had happened. So no problem.
I was blaming your staff. I was blaming the software.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Now, Councillor Peacock, you had your hand up. Was it to interject on Councillor Jenny just now?
No, it's just to support that Soldrop boundary.
Okay.
I think I asked this question at a board meeting because it's come up before, and it would be interesting just to see, because I think they're looking at some funds. It would be interesting. I'd like some feedback on that too, because I've lived in the town all my life, and we've got the boundary between Bedford Road and Soldrop, but I'm not quite sure where this other exists. So that was all. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And obviously the other point, your final point, David, about connectivity, or at least two-can crossings. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if we are going to have substantial development east of the A6, connectivity across that road is going to be of vital importance. And if the county council highways don't like it, well, then that's unfortunate.
Well, I don't think it's going to happen before the unitary takes over anyway, so I shouldn't worry about that one. But I'm just a bit intrigued about this Rushton Soldrop corridor, because I've come across it in relation to the Roman road going up to Chester House. But that was 1600 years ago. And I don't know whether it still exists or what, but I'd just be interested, because the officers mentioned it in their paper, and I just like either Richard or Michael to explain a bit more about it.
Thank you.
Through you, Chair, I'm going to ask Mike to respond to that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, folks, I jumped the gun there. Thank you. Can you all hear me? Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
And to see you as well.
Ah, great. Yeah, the Rushton to Soldrop corridor is actually a long-established concept. It was first put in the 2008 core spatial strategy. It's carried forward into the current core spatial strategy. It's one of the local corridors. It is defined, but it's very much, I think this is a key point that actually counts in favour of the Bedford Road site. The fact that this particularly in conjunction with the town council's proposal, the sports hub would allow this sort of generation of green infrastructure, and certainly the master plans that Bellway and Co are working on are very much are looking at quite significant green infrastructure anyway across that site. So it does very much fit with what Bellway is proposing, and that's obviously very encouraging. I think the sort of public right of way that bisects the site,
yeah,
and that's quite an important feature, and that would obviously have to feature. So I think, I mean, the green infrastructure corridor is obviously a sort of conceptual thing rather than a sort of, we want to make, sort of just have this sort of solid, lump, if for want of a better word, lump or area just of nothing but protected green space. It's more, I say it is a conceptual idea, but I think we would expect that Bellway and co would be very, to take it on board and work to deliver something that would enhance that, would deliver the net gains, and that's what this green infrastructure is about.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that's comforting. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, just so to keep people abreast of developments, I have Councillor Maxwell, Councillor Boto, Councillor North, Councillor Peacock and Councillor Mercer in the queue. So we have quite a number of speakers to come. So Councillor Maxwell, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Right.
I have 3 points that I'd actually like to bring up, actually. The first one is, I spoke to Hyman Ferrers today, council, and I gather that they've actually employed someone or as a consultant to actually make suggestions about the developments around not just Rushden, but Hyman as well, and how it's actually going to work out. So I'd actually quite like to see this report before any plans or signing off anything in the future. I think that they should be part of it, because at the moment they seem to be you seem to be drifting apart. When you look at employment, for instance, we don't want all BAs. We should be looking, as Councillor North suggested, at employment generally. High-end jobs. In April, you're going to be losing something like 500 people from the warehouse off John Clark Way. You see, and where do they go? I mean, that particular business is going to go to Peterborough. Why is it going to Peterborough? You've got to ask yourself. Unless you actually have the right housing mix, which actually then reflects employment, because a lot of people actually who live in our area actually work miles away. They don't work around here at all, because what is here for them to work at? The next point I'd like to make is about the education. At the moment, we just seem to be drifting. We've got 2 secondary schools. One of them has never really excelled for years. And if you look at it, it needs rebuilding. And the fact is that we should be looking at the schools we've got and looking how we can actually improve them, instead of just, right, we'll bung another one up like you have done off Bedford Road, which is fine. But again, it's not really meeting the needs of young people. If you're looking at this design for the next 15, 20 years down the line, whatever decisions that we make now is going to reflect what happens in the future. And I think that is very powerful, to make sure that not only do we make the right decisions, but residents are part of making this decision. Somebody said to me today, what is it you're talking about with this Rushden East? And I had to say to them, without actually seeing the whole plan myself, it would be difficult to actually make comments, but I did agree with them that we have lost a plot. We were a shoe industry. We're not a shoe industry. We had cottage industries, but we haven't got cottage industries. And now we've got a point where we don't have employment for young people having to go away to work. They go to university or they go and do a training apprenticeship, but they don't stay in this area because the work is not here for them to actually do. So whatever decisions you do make, it's all very well saying, oh, well, I want to do this or I want to do that. Unless a consultation is in place, you just don't sign something off without people being involved. And lastly, Ditchford Lane is a mess. Whatever you say going down there, it's an absolute mess. And Highways England have told me they are still remodelling the roundabout at Rushden Lakes. And we have to get that right, because at the moment it is a mess. How many people have near accidents every day on this roundabout is insurmountable. I go down there on a regular basis, so I do know what I'm talking about. So lastly, what I would like to say, whilst most of you have been involved in this development for the last 8 years, for me, I haven't. And as an outsider looking in, I think at the moment, it's got to be seriously considered to make sure that whatever decisions you make the right decisions. Because once you've made a decision and it gets signed off, that's it. It cannot go back, and that's the problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I would simply say on the nothing is just signed off. Everything that we do has always gone out for consultation. Indeed, the local plan is going to go out for consultation after the next meeting of this committee. So it isn't that anything is being done in the dark or anything like that. It is simply not the case. Do we always get, we do have to look at things in the round, as has been pointed out throughout this meeting and throughout many other meetings. And of course, employment's very important, and we've always agreed, we've always said so. So it is very important to preserve a balance, and we have to do what we are able to do. I'm going to ask Richard to respond quickly on a perhaps more professional basis, and then we'll move on. Richard?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Maxwell raised some sort of quite significant points in terms of the overall developments in the area. I can tell you that certainly there is additional work ongoing in relation to Rushden East, which is by consultants to look at the appropriate mix of employment uses on that area, because whilst jobs are important, it is the quality and the variety of jobs that can be provided in Rushden East. So we've currently got consultants looking at what other opportunities could be provided on there. I mean, the council has to produce its evidence. It's not per se an issue for the local plan, because that, as I said earlier in the evening, that framework, the master plan, should we call it, that will continue to emerge after we submit the plan, as long as it's in line with the policy. The policy, you could argue, doesn't go down to much detail. It says an appropriate mix. So it's up to us as a council to evidence what that appropriate mix would be. So it could include some B8, it could include all sorts of employment, but we need to evidence that, which is what we're currently working on. In terms of the site which is east of the A6 Bedford Road, that is primarily a housing site because it's meeting the shortfall in housing through the local plan. That's not per se about employment use. Although, as I said earlier, we would be keen to ensure that there are some facilities so that becomes a more sustainable site on that side of the A6, and that's what we will seek to do through, that will be another master plan, albeit for a smaller site to bring forward. Sure. But certainly in terms of education, we've obviously talked about that, and we will continue along with the promoters to work the best options, not just for Rushden East, but also for the land east of the A6. So, some of these proposals we've not quite got there yet. We know that because the discussions are ongoing, but the points you raise are valid, and of course as officers we will take those on board. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Richard, and thank you for your explanation. I think that's very helpful. Councillor Boto, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. In about 15 months' time, that giant stopper that we all know and love called Chowns Mill might finally be freed a bit and traffic might start to flow again. But I think the comments a moment ago about the Rushden Soldrap corridor really prompted me to make this remark. insofar as I think we all accept here that there is really no real alternative to this Rushden South East site, much as we might lament Rushden Lakes West not being available. But I am concerned really at the sheer volume of traffic which will be generated on the A6, not as a result of just this application, but of the Rushden Sue, combined with developments already happened at Higham, at Earthingborough, at Raunds, masses of traffic being generated onto the A6. When you then combine that with perhaps Bedford's ambitions, with further housing at the north end of their area, Sharnbrook, etc., I just would feel more comfortable if I thought there was some serious transport study going on about the use of the A6 for the future, because I just see it as an enormous, great big traffic jam, unless it is updated, not just in our part of the woods, obviously south towards Bedfordshire, towards Bedford itself. And of course, to get into Bedford now is impossible. Once you get to the far end of the dual carriageway in Bedford, you're into another great, huge traffic jam. So I just am concerned that with all these applications going along, there is a cumulative effect on the A6, and I would like to feel there was some sort of serious planning going on here between ourselves and Bedfordshire to see how this is going to manifest in years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Point well made, I think, and certainly the A6 is going to take quite a lot of pressure, both from the developments we're talking about and also in Bedfordshire itself. So, yeah, a very good point. Councillor North, please.
Thank you, Chair. The first point, I just would like to comment on Councillor Maxwell's point. I think we all appreciate she's joined us recently on this committee in relation to where we've been going, but I would, and I think you all remember that you know, 7 years ago when we started down this journey, when we actually indicated our low economic study, we were actually taking on board the very points that Councillor Maxwell has said, and I think we all understand and appreciate, you know, the loss of employment for this area, which is obviously why and I appreciate what Richard Palmer said about evidence, but as you know, Chair, you know, part of what we were trying to do is aspiration for this area, not just evidence base. There's plenty of evidence in the now outdated census that a lot of employment goes to Northampton, and just I think Councillor Maxwell knows this anyway, but just kind of reassurance that we've paid our own money out to do our own economic study that we're having refreshed at the moment, which obviously feeds into obviously the economic requirements for Rushden Sue in relation to jobs and houses, and actually having localised employment on that site. So I think we're fully aware and have been, but thank her for her comments, that right from the beginning we actually wanted to make the opportunity that this is a Sue, if we are talking about Rushden Sue, and actually you have got the opportunity to walk to work, you haven't got to drive, and that's the whole point of what you know, we have concerns about B8, not that they don't have you know, numbers of employment, but it's just making sure there's enough employment opportunities as possible. But obviously you're all aware of that, but it was worth repeating, Chair. But what I wanted to come back on and was support the deputy leader's point about the roundabout on the A6. It's obviously something I use very often at the bottom there in relation to Newton Road Junction. If we are, or if the development for Rushden Sue is still starting in the Knights Farm end, at the bottom end, and I'm still not sure, Chair, now whether they're actually going to put a road through the middle of the whole development to start with, or they're going to start doing it now by piecemeal, because you recall that they were going to put a whole road in right at the beginning through the whole site from John Clark Way all the way through. I don't know if that's still going to be the case. That you know, we should take on board the very comments that the deputy leaders made, and actually subsequently Councillor Boto, is that you know, there is a lot of pressure on that roundabout that would certainly need refactoring, and I think we've got a number of opportunities to do that now. So hopefully the planning policy officers will take this on board, because at the moment we're going through a Northamptonshire infrastructure plan, which actually has got a hypothetical needs on it rather than real ones. And I think, you know, if we're coming up with a real infrastructure needs list, this needs to be seriously added to it pronto. And we do need a transport study in relation to this area. And I appreciate what the deputy leader says. We're obviously out of time in relation to doing a master plan for this local plan in relation to that site, but it builds on what I was saying right at the beginning, is we can't have these isolated housing estates without having master plans. So it's all about the timing, Chair. And I appreciate I came in late on the last discussion, but I'm hoping across Northamptonshire there's going to be plenty of opportunity to look at master plan sites for housing delivery, so we can actually get the right mix of housing, leisure and jobs within any expansion of housing numbers, rather than, as I said earlier, just housing delivery. But my main point, Chair, was very much support the need, comments from other members, that we do need to take that roundabout into account pretty quickly, because I know we own the land opposite Knights Farm on that very corner there, opposite the surgery. So there is opportunity for expansion because part of the land is in council ownership, so we might not have some of the issues we have elsewhere. So I think that is going to be a priority. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Peacock, please. Or did you?
I think that was from before.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Okay, no problem. Thank you. Councillor Mercer, then, please.
Thank you very much. I was also going to follow up on this master plan idea, and Councillor North has just mentioned quite a bit. I'd just like to know how that will work, whether, you know, when it will be done, how it will be done, because it's all very well for us to say there needs to be a master plan, but if a planning application comes in and it just goes through, it just gets sort of pushed by. And in particular, the thing about a second access, because we've been told elsewhere further down the bypass A6 that we can't have a second access into a site, which is the one that comes out at the John Clark Way roundabout, and we have to have only a single access, and there's about 100 houses there, and that you can't have too many more off a single access, and here we're talking about 450 off a single access. So there really has to be a second access off that. You can't possibly have only 450 houses with a single access. I support it from the point of view that it's the most, it's expedient, because we have to get the local plan out, and it's going to fit in the short term. But I feel we are going to need more houses eventually, and the government has their way and doubles the number of houses that we have to provide. We're going to need other sites. Now, Rushton Lakes West was chosen before. Everyone seems to think that to go to school they've got to come through Rushton. Actually, it's not that far. It's not that far beyond where I live. But Stanton Cross is right next door. The application for the school there has already gone in, the planning application. As a county councillor, I've been dealing with it quite a bit. It's when you have the new road that they're going to put in from virtually opposite the new road into Rushton Lakes. There's a new road going all the way into Stanton Cross. Now, it may be 10 years in the future, but I can't see any of these developments coming before that sort of time frame anyway. So it's in the long term, it is going to be possible to get to schools, etc. in that other direction. So and I think people stop thinking of East Northants and Wellingborough are separate. They're going to be one authority in a very few months. Yes. And so, it's not going to be over the boundary. The boundary is at the moment Ditchford Lane, but I can see that road being upgraded. It will have to be at some point. So, we can't just see ourselves, up to the boundary, and you can't progress beyond it. We do need more employment. Take Councillor Maxwell's point, but we were going to have an enterprise centre at Rushton East. Unfortunately, it's taken so long. It's now been built in Raunds. but it was our aspiration to have high class, high end jobs. It's just that it hasn't happened, and now they want to put B8 in. So it's unfortunate the way it's happened, but it was our aspiration always.
Well, yeah, it has taken a long time, and I think you make an excellent point that, you know, we are not going to be East North Hants Council very soon. We are going to be the North Hants Authority, and the boundaries will reflect that. But it doesn't matter what boundary we use. You know, what development we put up has got to be balanced, and we've always tried to work on that. We don't just want housing estates. We do want jobs. We do want adequate leisure and other infrastructure, education, health, everything else. Not to mention some sort of road network that is fit for purpose. Because right at the moment we are not all going to jump into buses and trains and so on. We don't live in that part of the country. So there is an awful lot of strategic planning that needs to be done, both in terms of the developments we're talking about, in terms of the local plan that we're working to 2031, and in terms of strategic growth that the government may or may not want to happen, which we've discussed in previous meetings with the white paper and with the increase in housing allocation numbers. So there is a heck of a lot to get right, and as balanced as we are able to do. Okay.
Can I just have an answer on how we managed to get this master plan for
the Rushton Bedford? Yeah.
Southern option. Yeah.
Richard, are you here? Because I know you had some reception difficulties. This isn't going too well this evening. Richard? Okay.
Hi. Hello,
yeah.
Folks. I've just had Richard on the phone, actually. I think he's having big troubles with his technology at the moment.
We're having difficulties tonight.
We're struggling, but I'm here to answer any sort of other questions as need be.
Well,
so,
we were talking about a master plan concept for the new Rushton extension, the new Bedford Road extension,
and second access as well.
Yeah, with the 450 houses, a second access.
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. I think certainly at the moment the proposal, the wider master plan, which I can sort of say quite openly because they submitted it back in March for the previous Rushton Lakes West consultation. It does talk about sort of extending, sort of looking at this as a sort of phase one of a large development. Certainly that's what Councillor Jenny is very in particular was alluding to. And I think, so yes, now Langdon Homes have also suggested that in their representation, the idea of a sort of second access off the A6, but obviously at this stage we're not particularly entertaining their proposals because, as I say, it would lead to a significant loss of a large part of the golf course. So we're not. But I mean, certainly I would emphasise that Bellway Homes are quite keen to work with us, closely with us in any master planning for this. So I think they've given us sort of some good reassurance in that regard. So I mean, that's probably the best that I could say at this stage. I think we hope we can make the policy as robust as we can to allow the sort of master plan to come forward as part of bringing the development to fruition, really, because but I say certainly I think at the certainly the proposal was for a single access, and we've had sort of certainly the feedback we've had from the Highways Authority has been fairly positive in that regard, and they are already sort of very much down with working on and putting together a detailed transport assessment. That work's already well underway. I mean, they've given us that assurance.
Chairman, I mean, looking at this plan, Appendix 4, it actually comes part of it right down to the A6, and so I wouldn't have thought it needed to lose any golf course land. The other thing is that, you know, so other people who said today, we don't want piecemeal. We have 450 hit hazards here and 1,000 there and 500 there, and then by the time you know it, you've got a chock-a-block car park down the A6. So you know, that we need to you know, look at it as a whole rather than keep doing it piecemeal. And when we come back to the roundabout, it just occurred to me that everyone was saying about the roundabout needs to be upgraded. I was taking it was the roundabout where the access was, which is the one into the sports hub and to this new site, and then Councillor Jenny was talking about the one up near the doctor's surgery. So you know, I think they probably both need upgrading, but certainly this one up where this access to 450 homes is proposed would need to be extended, and I don't know what the land issues are there, but if it's going to be a single access, I can't see you know, it's going to cope.
Okay, well, I think the point's well made, and whichever roundabout, I guess it's like the lowest common denominator, because if you're going to be tipping all this traffic onto the A6, you're going to need the roundabouts, all of them, to be of a particular standard. Councillor Jenny, I see you've got your hand up. Councillor Maxwell, I've seen you. Councillor Jenny?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just finding the one of the things that alarmed me when we talked with Bellway and in relation to roundabouts, but seeing as we're getting stuck into roundabouts tonight, was they were talking about bus routes and support and things like that, and putting a bus stop on the A6 just south of that roundabout. Now, just imagine the chaos between 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock every morning with a bus stopping there.
Can we move?
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Jenny, we can't hear you.
Oh, really?
Yes, really. We're having real bad technical difficulties this evening. It's never been as bad as this. Right, so you were saying about the bus stop causing carnage on the A6.
Yes. Yeah, there was a proposal to put a bus stop just south of the A6 Bedford Road roundabout.
Yeah.
Well, yes, a bus stop would be very appreciated, but the queue of traffic that's going to come back behind that first thing in the morning is absolutely totally horrendous. So we have really got to think about all these traffic studies and all of that sort of thing. Yeah. It isn't quite as good a site as it looks at first glance. I'm not saying it can't be sorted, but it has to have a master plan to do it.
Well, okay, thank you. It is, of course, one of the recommendations is that we allocate the site, and as you know, obviously all these things are going to have to be considered when it comes to detailed planning. Councillor Maxwell, I think you.
That's why I'm quite prepared to support it tonight on that basis.
Okay. Very good, Councillor Maxwell.
I just got two further points. The first one is you're talking about the fact that in March, when we all sort of go to the North Unitary, it's not, I mean, you were saying about Wellingborough being actually will all be one. That's fine, but in fact that won't happen, because I think you'll find that Wellingborough, Kettering and Corby will want to have their own master plan about what happens, and equally they'll have a master plan of what should happen to us as well. And I think that their master plan probably won't be what we want. So unless we get that organised properly,
Councillor,
beforehand,
when we are the North Northamptonshire Unitary Authority, no doubt the North Northamptonshire Unitary Authority will formulate its own policies, but that includes us. It's not a factional thing.
No.
And of course we all have to speak up for our own areas as councillors, wherever we are. But you know, there will be, you know, we will be working together. I mean, the analogy really is the Joint Planning Committee, which has done a lot of the strategic planning in North Northamptonshire, and it's worked very well with Kettering, with Corby, with Wellingborough, and with East Northamptonshire. And you know, 3 of us sit on that, or 4 of us sit on that committee from East Northamptonshire, or one's a county council rep, to be honest. But it's always worked very well for the good of North Northamptonshire, and that is where we're going to be on the 1st of April.
And the second question I wanted to bring up was the fact that you were talking about roundabouts on the A6. I just want to bring up a point which I did bring up at a planning meeting, was where you got the special school, then you've got the Northamptonshire FA coming across. That roundabout there has no crossing from that site into Hynd Ferrers. There's no crossing, and at the moment the students who go to Moreton College, it's a matter of running across in order to get across. It is dire at the moment. So I really think that needs to.
Okay. Well, it's not really, I mean, having good crossings and connectivity, you know, on all these locations does need to be looked at, certainly. Okay, is there anybody else? Would anybody else like to speak? This is interesting. We have got 6 minutes before the 2 hours. Does any Richard? Are you there, Richard?
I don't think Richard is.
Okay.
That I think it's
all right.
It's just me, I'm afraid.
Oh, no, not at all. That's fine. But anyway, you've heard the observations made by members and taken them into consideration, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. I think we probably got virtually every issue well covered. I'm reasonably hopeful that the policies as they're drafted, you know, preferably with the tweaks that we propose, should cover and be as strong as they can be. I'll give the committee that reassurance.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. I'm just going to ask Councillor North to wind up.
Well, Chair, I just conscious of the time, but I would hope to, you know, obviously leave it in your good hands and the Vice Chair, but hopefully I think there was great supported view from everybody in relation to in relation to my comments in relation to 9.6, including from yourself. So I don't need to, I think, to make a fundamental alteration to the recommendations, Chair, because that would take up too much time, but I trust in yourself that I think you would take all that on board in relation to the issue I raised and was supported about 9.6 in relation to Rushton Sewer and not ring fencing the site.
Yeah, absolutely. And your point is very well made. Okay, so this is interesting. This is the first planning policy meeting for some time that we won't have had to pass a particular motion. So congratulations, everybody. Anyway, at 13.1, the committee is recommended to approve the allocation of land to the east of the A6 Bedford Road, Rushton, in place of the proposed allocation at Rushton Lakes West, incorporating the proposed northern boundary extension as shown in Appendix 4. Agree the officer responses to the representations as set out in appendices 1 and 2. Agree the revised wording to the draft policy and supporting text of policies 28 and 33 of the local plan as set out in appendices 5 and 6. And to delegate any further detailed revisions to the relevant policy wording and supporting text of the local plan that may arise from this report to the Head of Planning Services in consultation with the Chair and Deputy Chair of the Planning Policy Committee, along with the Chair of the Rushton East Project Board. I think we can probably take these on block. May I have a proposer, please? I have Councillor Jenny and the seconder, Councillor Peacock. Oh. Did somebody speak? All right. Okay, all those in favour?
Aye. Aye.
Are there any against? Are there any abstentions? That's carried, and that brings us to the end of the agenda for this evening. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your patience. We really have had a bad technical evening. It's been difficult to hear people, so I'm very grateful to colleagues who were asked to repeat themselves or told they couldn't be heard, and I'm very grateful for everybody for their patience in listening to what's been a very interesting and a very worthwhile debate. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. There will be another meeting of this committee on a date in January to sign off on the Part 2 local plan. So from a planning policy committee perspective, it leaves me just to wish everybody a very happy Christmas and all the compliments of the season, and we look for a much better 2021 in so many ways. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I declare the meeting closed.
Thank you so much. Perfect timing.
Good night.
2 minutes to go.
Good night.
Thank you. Thanks, David.
Yeah, all good. Thank you, guys, and have a pleasant evening.
Yeah,
What's left?
you too. Cheers.
Bye.